I'm State Representative Roger Bruce, and welcome to this week's edition of Under the Gold Dome. And as we've done in weeks past, I've invited some of my colleagues to join us today. We all serve on different committees, so sometimes we don't know what bills are being vetted in other committees until it actually gets to the floor for a vote. So that's why I invite my colleagues to come in, because they have information about some things that I just may not have information about, and vice versa. So with that, first, why don't we introduce our guest for this week, starting with...
Thank you, Representative Bruce. My name is Representative David Wilkerson. I serve the Cobb County area, Powder Springs, Austell, Mableton, and a little bit of Smyrna. First elected in 2010, started in 2011. I also serve as treasurer for the House Democratic Caucus.
He collects all the money and beats us up.
And treasurer for the Working Families Caucus.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Bruce, for this invitation. My name is Derrick Jackson. I represent District 64, which consists of parts of Fayette County and South Fulton County. I always tell everyone that District 64 have the two largest movie studios, Pinewood Studios and Atlanta Metro Studios.
All right, that's a good thing. And we introduce yourselves real quick again so that folks know who you are.
I'm Jason Gathing, legislative aide for Honorable Roger Bruce. Representative Bruce.
And viewers, hello, I'm back. Andre Fields, serve on the staff of Representative Bruce as well.
Okay, and they're going to probably tell you that you're going to talk up so that the mic will get you. This has been an interesting week. All kinds of things have happened locally as well as nationally. I'm proud to say that we finally got one of two bills that we were working on for the new city of South Fulton, and I thank my colleagues here for helping me to get that through. There's a piece of Fulton County, it's called the Fulton Industrial Boulevard corridor over there. It was the last piece of Fulton County that was not already in a city, and we are trying to make sure that it becomes part of the city. It will add additional revenue to our city, but that bill passed out of the House this week, and it's headed over to the Senate. And thank you for everybody's help in getting that done. Before we start talking about the things that I'm doing, I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about the things that you guys are doing in your district, and as well as the things that would be of general concern to everybody across the state. So why don't you talk to us about some of the things that you're doing?
I appreciate that. A lot of things that I'm trying to focus on this session deal with just making sure that my people in my community are being taken care of. So I'm spending a lot of time working with my county commissioners and city council people to make sure that we're bringing economic growth to the county, as well as that we are always sensitive to the needs of those that may not have a voice for themselves.
Are there any specific bills that you are working on this session?
Not related to the county level. That's more just communications, because a lot of things that we deal with, whether it's gunfire in the backyard or gunfire near schools, that I think can be dealt with local legislation. Okay. So on a state level, though, I am working on my 529 plan that would allow families to save for college that make less than $60,000 a year. We made it to the floor of the House last year, did not make it all the way through, but what it does is it partners with families. So if for every dollar you put in, the state would match $1 up to $500.
Are you aware of any bills that we need to make sure that our constituencies collectively know is coming up?
Yes, I would say one of the ones that would probably impact my community the most is adding to those crimes that juveniles can be charged with. There's a House bill, I believe it's 116, that's coming out of Cobb County that would add 2 additional penalties that you can try a 13-year-old as an adult and not give the Superior Court that option.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, I guess it goes.
I saw you nod. That's why I asked.
I guess it goes back to the piece of legislation that you're trying to push right now. Where in Fulton County they assign those credits for points, to juveniles who commit certain crimes. And once you get a certain amount of points, you can be charged as an adult. But charging a 13-year-old as an adult, I think that's pretty insane.
Yeah, and there was some other legislation along that same line, but it was at the elementary school level where they wanted to stop the opportunity to suspend children from school if they're at the elementary school. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's one of the legislations that's part of the Democratic caucus agenda, and that would be the too young to suspend
Right.
bill. So basically, children up to, I believe, second or third grade, they just don't know what they're doing a lot of times, and
Right.
they should not be suspended from school. So that's a piece of legislation that we are supporting.
Yeah, the idea of taking kids out of the school system doesn't make any sense to me at all.
It does not. If you look at even the way we evaluate schools with the CCRPI, the biggest factor that goes into that is attendance. So if you look at schools within my county, for example, there are cases where you may see 1,000 suspensions at 2 different middle schools, but one middle school has 800 in, 200 out. The other one has 800 out, 200 in.
Mm-hmm.
Those kids that are kept in school are learning, plus they're not being penalized on a school level.
Okay.
The only problem I have with any kind of suspension is that it's too subjective, right? And so when you get to the point where second and third grade, who's making that final call? The teachers in the classroom or the principal? And so it's just too subjective to put children at risk by taking them out of school. That just exacerbates the problem.
Okay.
And I would also put, I definitely put the blame on the parents, especially a second or third grader. You bring the parents in, take them away from work, which they're not going to be happy with. Keep them in that classroom, and it's their job to keep that kid in line. It's the teacher's job to actually educate that kid, not to be there, to rear the children. So
Okay.
I'll put that more on the adults.
Okay, let's talk about what's going on in your world. Now, Derrick, he's the rookie here. This is your first term, and so we're not going to beat up on you too bad. So
Okay.
tell us about what you got going
Well,
on.
Representative Bruce, one of the things that I'm working on, that I'm sponsoring, is trying to create an atmosphere of transparency. And so my first piece of legislation is the Open Records Act. So anyone that goes into contract with a state entity greater than 50,000, they should be subject to Open Records Act. And so that way, you would create more transparency in the state of Georgia. With my military background, I just think it's the right thing to do. Anytime, doesn't matter if it's the news, us as legislators or constituents, if there's something that's questionable, they should have access to that information.
Okay, and there's a number of initiatives, as you kind of alluded to earlier, that are coming out from the Democratic caucus. I know another one dealt with sick leave or sick pay. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it would probably be better for the sponsor to talk about that one on a future show. But yeah, we have, like you said, a package of bills that deal with economic security, making sure that families can make a living, making sure they have the educational opportunities that are out there, and then we have a big package of military bills that we've been sponsoring to make sure that military families, when they transition to Georgia, that their professional spouses can still work in their field of practice without undue red tape.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it'd be great to have the sponsor on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
unless you know-
Well, I'm a co-sponsor on the sick pay leave one.
Okay.
And so if you work 56 hours or more full time, in the state of Georgia, as it stands right now, the corporation, this right to work state, they don't have to honor your sick pay days.
Okay.
So you may hire, and they may say, Representative Bruce, we're going to hire you with company ABC, and you get 8 paid sick leave. But when you go to execute one in your employee handbook right now, it is at the discretion of the company.
Okay. All right. So we will do that. We'll get the sponsor of that legislation on a show. There's some other things that we have been working on all along. You want to kind of give an update on the 2 bills that you guys have been working on?
Oh yeah. So I'm working on House Bill 22, the Any Precinct Act, right now. And basically, this past week, I sat down with the chairman of the committee, who was it was an interesting meeting to say the least. Chairman Reinders, and he basically tried to equate the Any Precinct Act to violating the one man, one vote rule, and Jim Crow, saying that the metro areas would have an undue advantage over the rural areas. However, the legislation is...
All of you have a look on your face like, huh?
Yeah. Right. So the legislation is not a mandate for any county. What it is an authorization, and the language in the bill specifies that. But he said, the bill's died the last 2 years, but we're going to fight them this time to get a hearing. And, like you were talking about in terms of transparency, if you have opposition, well, let's state that opposition out in the public forum. And, we'll bring in our supporters of the legislation, and we'll do it that way.
And just have an open debate about it. And if it's worthy, then it's worthy. And if it's not, it's not. But, we talked about this before. This is one of those common sense pieces of legislation. We already have early voting. We already have opportunities for people to go and vote in places that are convenient. Why not do that on election day? That's all this bill does. It says take what we do during early voting and do it on election day, which is, to me, logical.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Representative Bruce, because in this day and age with technology, it's real easy for the system to be able to check and make sure that Derrick Jackson only voted once on the election day.
Yeah. And
so
to me,
you're exactly right.
This is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
To me.
Yes, and we had a hearing in Science and Technology from the Secretary of State's office, and they assured us that there was no voter fraud in the state of Georgia. And early voting, like you said, you do that wherever you are in the county. Absentee voting, you can vote from anywhere you are, and you mail it in. This, you actually have someone coming in person, showing their ID, and voting. So you're right, it's just a piece of common sense, bipartisan legislation.
And we do have bipartisan
that
support
I think
for
would
it.
make sense for the state of Georgia.
So if you are, in fact, watching this, call your legislator and have your mama, your grandmama, your sisters, your brothers, and all over the state to call in and talk to their legislators about supporting this common sense legislation.
If I could just add one thing, don't just call your legislator, but call the committee chairman to implore him to hold a hearing on the piece of legislation as well.
Exactly. All right, real quick, what you working on?
All right, I'm working on House Bill 21. It basically it puts a director in place to oversee the. In the past, there's been a bunch of discrepancies in who is not receiving government contracts pertaining to women and minorities. So, with my bill, I think it's going great right now. I've been talking to all the committee members, just letting them know that, hey, we want to have this heard. And also, as far as with the chair, I'm talking with him as well. He's not really for the bill. So I've been putting a lot of pressure from his community, the supporters that we have, to call him and just let him know this is what the people want. So
At least have a discussion. That's really all we're asking for, and all of these things that all of us are doing is just give it a fair opportunity to be discussed, debated, and then let it fall where it may. But don't stop the conversation because you have a personal issue. Okay.
If I may, Representative
Sure.
Bruce, a lot of folks think that this is creating like a quota system. That's a myth. I think this is simply doing what's right for the people. And when you have stipulations such as this, that way everybody is considered. So yeah, I fully support that bill. This is not you're not creating a quota system.
No, we're just saying this level playing field.
Right.
All right, before we wrap up, let's go back to the federal things that's going on. I understand that our president had a press conference or some kind of interaction where he was talking about the fact that this is now Black History Month, and he made reference to one of our former. Why don't you talk about it? You want to talk about it?
I'll let you, because I might laugh too much. You want to talk about it?
So the president had a listening session at the White House where, it was supposed to turn out as a celebration of Black history and a recognition. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll let
Have
it
to
be
make
first.
sure.
It's very fitting with the current president, so you could create words too.
So the president was supposed to recognize a Black History Month, and he started going off about how the media is out to get him and fake news and whatnot, and how much Fox loves him, and then he kind of just went to the generic African American heroes and sheroes that everyone knows, or that they probably would hear in passing. Harriet Tubman, Dr. King, and then he got to Frederick Douglass, and he spoke in terms of as if Frederick Douglass was still
Still here.
alive, and how he is a great American, and how he's being recognized more and more lately. It just was highly confusing.
And I don't remember the exact date. I just know it was the 1800s when he left here. Is that correct?
He has been dead for a number of years, and but alternative facts allows the
Alternative
president
facts.
to.
That's a new word for our new term for. I don't know.
Well, the only thing I would like to add with referring to President Trump is you just see a huge degradation of the office itself, right? There's no diplomacy. That office, the power itself, regardless who's currently sitting in the seat, has a certain level of stature around the world.
Across the world.
Yeah.
And that is that is
being diminished.
And you can't just look at that, but we also have to look at his policies, though. I mean, if you look at the education secretary that he's pushing, DeVos, you even had charter school proponents like Broad come out and say she is not qualified.
Right.
There are no guns to fight grizzly bears out in the Midwest. There are ways to evaluate students, and so the concern is how does that translate on a state level? Right. So when you see bills like they dropped this week, where there are 2 bills that actually increase that giveaway to private schools from $58 million to $150 million.
Right.
That falls in line with what Trump is trying to do. Right. He has promised vouchers on a statewide level. We're starting to see that. So despite the voters kicking back that constitutional amendment last year overwhelmingly, we are now seeing that they're pushing the voucher path to give money to their friends.
Yeah. Right. Okay, well, we've covered a lot in a short period of time. Any last thoughts or ideas that you want to share with the viewers before we wrap it up?
Yeah. I guess the thing that I would leave with what I just talked about is to focus on education, so-called reform, accountability. The governor had an education reform commission several years ago. We have not acted on that. What we are doing now is turning the page and waiting for legislation to come out, but all we're seeing is more giveaways, tripling student scholarship organizations. So I would love to see us actually talk to the PTAs, talk to the families that voted against the amendment, and say, what do you want, versus pushing this down their throats.
Okay. Derrick?
I would like to encourage everyone to visit GeorgiaResists.com. On GeorgiaResists.com is a brand new website that we launched last week.
You're talking to each other.
Oh, on there. But on GeorgiaResists.com, one of the things you'll find on there is we would get a chance to educate, build awareness, most importantly, how to reach your state representatives and your federal representatives.
Okay. I would be remiss if we did not briefly touch on casinos. And, it's an afterthought, but I think it's worth a minute or two here. You guys ready to go on record or not go on record or talk about it?
Go on record saying what? No, actually, I will say that, we have seen some progress. I mean, I'm not committed either way, but there were certain things that I know our caucus has taken position on, saying that there has to be a need-based component to it. And so we're starting to see that, and so once the legislation comes out, then we can make a better decision, but I think it's going to be a tough row either way.
Right.
But needs-based, if it's not in there, it's not even a discussion.
And that's my thought as well. We need to, everybody keeps saying it's going to reduce the amount of money that goes into the Hope Scholarship, but we can designate where the money goes. And if people decide that they're going to play the lottery less and gamble in casinos more, then you just make up the difference with the money from the casinos. Right. What I try to tell people all the time is that, how a bill starts out is seldom how it ends up. So if you have a position on it, I don't want, did you have a position?
Well, I'm still doing my due diligence because there are a lot of myths out there. Some folks will say that with casino comes crime. So far in my research, I have not seen that. But I also see the other side that, we talk about jobs too.
Right.
And so if you can have an opportunity for someone who just graduated from high school that can make $47,000 to $52,000 a year being a poker dealer, then there's opportunity there. So I haven't made a decision yet. I'm still doing my due diligence.
And I think we're all in that mode. It's the reality is that we are watching dollars, lots of dollars, leave Georgia, go into Alabama and other places that have casinos around us, I guess North Carolina. And but they're leaving here and they're taking that money with them. They're spending it somewhere else but then they come back here for service because we
Right.
still have to provide the services for where they live.
That's right.
So the whole intent is to try to find ways to keep some of that money and use those resources to benefit the citizens of Georgia. Real quick, anything, guys?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think the casinos is actually a really great idea. It provides entertainment. It'll bring some revenue, jobs, as you said, and also it's a great source for taxes as far as for that can go to schools, that can go to community, wherever it needs to go. But and like Representative Roger Bruce said, you know, the money's going out the state, so that's even a way of keeping the money in the state.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Basically, I just want to go back to what I was speaking about before, in terms of the legislation that we're working on. Right now, just have some people and employing a strategy to where people can do basically what the leader was talking about last night in terms of speaking out, standing up, and showing up.
I think her term was speak up,
Speak up, show up, and stand up.
and stand up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys. It's been great talking to you. You're welcome to come back anytime you want to as you move through the session and find things of interest that would be of interest to all of our constituency. Let's just come on back and we'll talk some more.
Okay.
All right.
Okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thank you.